Hello again. In this video, we're going to discuss how to interpret SPSS output for t-tests. Now, in the class so far, we have been running analysis basically by hand, and we use the formulas, equations, and do lots of manual hand calculations. And the purpose of doing the hand calculation, of course, is because we are still learning these techniques, concepts. So it helps us to understand what is actually going on when we conduct a significance test. Which, of course, in reality, as a researcher, if you conduct a research, you collect data, most likely you're not going to analyze your data by hand. Instead, we use statistical softwares to analyze the data. And once you pass Psych 9, the next class you need to take, Stats and Methods class you need to take as a Psych major is Psych 121, Methods and Statistics in Psychological Research. In that class, one of the things you're going to learn is to use SPSS to conduct analysis that we introduced in Psych 9 and interpret SPSS, the output. And so you also need to conduct some actual research, usually as a group project and etc. So a lot of fun in future, but now I just want to give you some initial exposure to running the analysis using SPSS and especially interpret SPSS output. So using statistical software for paired sample t-test and other tests, this is not the main requirement of Psych 9. But there is a video included with Scikit-learn that you can watch. You can go follow the steps. And for those of you who are interested in learning something about SPSS, I think it's a great idea, just kind of getting ready for your next stats class, Psych 121. And definitely, SPSS is available for students in the SAC state. You can download it, install, and you can just basically try it out. And try it out is the best way to learn a computer software. So it's when it comes to statistic software like SPSS, it's the same deal. Okay, so for today, we're just going to focus on interpreting SPSS output, and for independent samples t-test, and also for paired samples t-test. And so here is an example of a screenshot of the SPSS output for an independent samples t-test. Okay, so when you run the test, SPSS gives you a couple of things, and let's see. So you have group statistics, and this is a table. We would obtain the mean and standard deviation for your sample. Okay, it's the mean and the standard deviation. It also gives us a standard error, which we don't need to report. And we only report the mean and the standard deviation when we report the results of a study. So standard error, as you remember, once we have standard deviation, we take standard deviation divided by the square root of sample size. So 1.21 divided by the square root of 6 equals 0.49. You can kind of verify that number. So it's fun to see that you know how to get those numbers, and not just look at those numbers, but also we know how to get those numbers. Okay, so that's essentially descriptive statistics. So in this case, for the first group, m equals 38.67. And you always round up to 2 decimal points. Standard deviation equals 1.21. For the second condition, mean equals 35.40, standard deviation equals 1.52. By the way, this is an example that we used for class activity when we introduced the independent samples t-test. It's the same data set. Now, instead of doing the calculation by hand, we are using SPSS. And this is the output. Okay, so the second part of the SPSS output gives us independent samples t-test. It actually gives us two tests. The first one is Levene's test for equality of variance. Now, if you recall from our discussion, one of the assumptions of independent samples t-test is the homogeneity of a variance assumption, the equal variance assumption. So when we run a t-test, SPSS automatically compute the test for this assumption. So, in this case, we can look at the level of significance for Levene's test. It equals 0.78, which is not significant. Now, not significant in this case is a good thing. It means there was no violation. Essentially, it tells us that the variance for the two population standard deviation or variances are not significantly different. Remember that the homogeneity of variance assumption goes like this. So you have sigma squared for population 1, and you also have the sigma squared variance for population 2, and the two are equal. So this is the homogeneity of variance assumption. And our test says, yes, no, there was no significant difference because p equals 0.78. So that's a good thing, and it means we can move on and we can interpret the result of the t-test. And we have two rows, so we go with the first row that says equal variance assumed. So under the assumption that the variances for the two populations were equal, we run this test. We have 9 degrees of freedom. Right? Degree of freedom. We have t equals 3.98. And SPSS gave us both the two-sided and one-sided p-value. So we are conducting a two-tailed test. So two-sided p equals 0.003. Okay, so t in parentheses, degree of freedom, equals 3.98, p equals 0.003. So that's the result of the independent samples t-test. And we also have the 95% confidence interval of the difference, so which is this part. We still go with the first row. That's with the equal variance assumed. So the lower boundary is 1.41, upper boundary is 5.12. So this is 95% confidence interval. 95% CI equals 1.41 to 5.12. And effect size. So effect size is in a different table. And we have a couple of different options. The one that we use is Cohen's d. It's the distance between the two distributions, standardized, right? M1 minus M2 divided by the standard deviation. So pooled standard deviation. And we go with the point estimate. So point estimate in this case equals 2.41. Okay, so Cohen's d in this case equals 2.41. So that's all the statistics that we need. Usually we don't care really report the 95% confidence interval for Cohen's d. We just report Cohen's d itself. So again, from this SPSS output, we obtained descriptive statistics, the mean standard deviations for each condition, the homogeneity of variance, Levene's test result, the t-test result, t-statistic, and the p-value, and also we have 95% confidence interval and Cohen's d. So in this case, because the difference between the two conditions was statistically significant, we need to report the effect size and the confidence interval. Okay, so this is the SPSS output for independent samples t-test. Next slide, we have SPSS output for paired samples t-test. It looks slightly differently, but more or less we obtain the same information. So paired sample statistics. This is a table where we obtain the mean and the standard deviation. Again, we don't really need a standard error in this case. So we have condition 1, 3.67 is the mean. SD equals 0.82. For condition number 2, the mean equals 2.33. SD also equals 0.82. And we don't really need to look at paired samples correlations. We don't need that table. And we do need to take a look at the paired samples test. And we have T equals 4.00 degree of freedom equals 5, and two-sided p-value equals 0.01. So if we go with one-sided test, it's 0.005. Okay, so that's the descriptive statistics. The t-value, again, in parentheses, is the degree of freedom. So t with 5 degrees of freedom equals 4.00, p equals 0.01. And we also have the effect size. We have the 95% confidence interval, which is, we would go with, confidence interval is over here. .48 to 2.19. That's the, let's see. Yeah, 2.19, not 2.18. So 2.19 is the 95% confidence interval. And finally, we can take a look at effect size. And we want to go with Cohen's d, which is here. And we go with the point estimate, 1.633. It's a very large effect. So Cohen's d in this case equals 1.63. Okay, so again, from this SPSS output for paired samples t-test, we obtain the descriptive statistics, the test statistic, which is the t-score and the p-value. Because the difference was statistically significant, we are going to report the effect size as measured by Cohen's d, and we're also going to report the 95% confidence interval. Okay, so this is the end of this video.